You have been lied to, and I'm sorry. The lie that you were told was that in order to have good timing, you need to practice with a metronome. You need to play along to a metronome. That by playing and practicing your song with a metronome, it will improve your sense of timing. This is not the case. People say that when you practice with a metronome, it helps you keep better time, but in fact, it's not you that's keeping time. It's the metronome. Now, let me stop here and say, I don't think practicing with a metronome is a bad thing. It's very good. You can learn where you're rushing a piece or where you're slowing down in a piece, and it's great for figuring out your tendencies of where you like to slow down and where you like to speed up. But the fact remains, it doesn't improve your timing. Not in the way that you think, anyway. Now, before I go any further, let's get the usual stuff out of the way. Hi, I'm Mewan. This is the Musician's Workbench. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss out on any of the uploads. I want to talk today about the idea that a metronome and being able to keep perfect time all the time is like the gold standard of being a good musician. You hear it often with music teachers: practice with a metronome, learn with a metronome. You need to be able to keep time perfectly. And while that is a good skill to have, there are some knock-on effects that I see in recording music today, which are kind of a direct result from the idea that perfect time with no variation is actually the goal. And we'll discuss that further. So first of all, what is a metronome? I think most of us know what a metronome is. Here's some pictures. They keep a click. Sometimes it's a swinging pendulum. Sometimes it's a digital metronome that keeps time, evenly spaced pulses, so that you can practice a piece. The only problem with that is music isn't static. Music is emotional. Well, good music, you could argue, is emotional. And emotions, like human beings, they make our sense of timing speed up and slow down. Now, I can see a lot of people screaming right at the moment, throwing stuff. No, you're not meant to let your emotions get in the way of the speed of the music. And as a musician, yes, you're meant to be in charge of your instrument, but you also need to recognize that music, being the emotional medium that we're working in, is very unnatural if it doesn't have changes of speed. You see, you listen to any classical music, you'll notice that sometimes the tempo speeds up a little bit, sometimes it slows down a bit. So just like with music being loud and quiet, if music was always the exact same level of volume, it'd be boring. You need the quiet, you need the loud, you need to be able to slow down and speed up sometimes. So the whole idea of practicing with a metronome isn't that it makes your sense of timing better. The whole point of practicing with a metronome is it makes you a better player at playing music when you're not the one setting the time. It allows you to practice the art of listening to someone else and making sure that you're walking in step with them. When I practice with a metronome, one of the things I like to do is actually practice. Let's say I'm practicing at 100 beats per minute, then you practice the piece at 95 beats per minute, and then you practice the piece at 105 beats per minute. So you practice in and around, and when you go back to the actual beat that the piece is meant to be played at, you're more in control, your actions are more intentional because you know how to play that slower and faster. Now, as human beings, we have many different references for speed. Sometimes it's our heart, sometimes it's our breathing, sometimes it's a pace that we're walking at. And when we get excited, we tend to speed up. And when we're relaxed or sad or depressed, we tend to slow down. Same thing in music. And this is more of a modern day problem than a olden day problem, simply because of technology. And this is where I want to introduce the idea that practicing with a metronome and the idea that good time is just steady and constant and static and never changes isn't exactly where we want to be heading with music. Now, the metronome has an ugly cousin, which we know as the click track. And if you've never experienced what a click track is before, that is often used more in modern day music than in the past, where you would have a drummer come in, put down a drum track, and then you would have a bass guitar player come in, and then you would have a guitarist come in. Basically, it facilitates recording a song when not everyone is in the room at the same time. Now, Generally, you need a click track for a drummer. They're the one who's, setting the beat. Once they've set the beat down, then everyone else can just listen to the drums. The only problem with that is often the click track doesn't take into account the emotional life of the piece. Some parts do naturally want to speed up, and that's a good thing. Some parts want to slow down and get quiet. That's also a good thing. But most of the time when people set a click track for the drummer to record their track on, it's just 120 beats per minute, set it, forget, go away. The drummer comes in, does their piece, and that's it. To me, that is a huge mistake. What you want to do is be able to set up, if you are doing a click track, set up your system so you know your song, you know where it slows from 90 beats per minute down to 80 beats per minute, then back up to 85 beats per minute, and then back up to 90 beats per minute. You want to be able to set up your song and your click track so that it follows the emotional energy of the song. Now, in early years of recording, this wasn't a hard thing to do at all because everyone just crowded around one microphone, sang, played them instruments and all that, and all the music was recorded at one time. After the invention of multi-track recording, people could come in and come out. Many albums were recorded with half the band not even in the room, and then the next day they would come in and finish their piece. That's where we run into this problem with click tracks. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to show you one of my songs where I wrote the song, where I sort of fleshed out where it had an emotional crescendo, where it sort of wanted to back off. There are still some artists who do this very well. There are some classic examples where artists do follow this slowing down and speeding up of time to great effect. Off the top of my head, I can think of James Taylor and Carolina in My Mind. After the bridge, just listen to the part where he goes, "You must forgive me." It slows down and then it builds back up. That's intentional. That's not a mistake. That is an artistic choice to really sink into that mood and then come back out of it again. Jack Johnson does it in a couple of his songs. A great example is Bohemian Rhapsody. That's changing all over the place. Dire Straits do it in a lot of their music, especially all of their live music. And then you've got pretty much any classical music does the same thing. They use tempo to accentuate the emotional characteristics of the music. So let's have a look at one of my songs now where I intentionally manipulated the tempo of my song to accentuate the emotional life of the song. Okay, so this is my setup. I encourage you to ignore the flavour of Logic Pro. It's ancient, and I'm not really going to go into how you flex time. Just know that it can be done. Pay attention to the panel on the right. The very top, it's got 1 1 1 1. That's the first bar of the first beat to the first bar and all that sort of stuff. And as you can see, I'm just dialing in some settings here that describe how the speed, how the tempo will react. Will it be sharp or will it be slow and gradual? So just know that it can be done. I'll do a video on that at some other time. You're going to want to know your song and have a click track or a drum beat already down. That's a software instrument. You can't do this with analog recordings because when you flex the time, that will change the pitch of them, or it just doesn't sound good. So you can see here we're cruising along at 90 beats per minute. And at the end of this verse, it's going to slow down all the way to about 80, 85 beats per minute, and then kick back in at 90. From a distance I have seen the face of love twist and... So we're cruising along at 90 beats per minute. Probably took me about 4 or 5 goes in this song, and just noting down at what bar and what time I wanted to slow down. And then you plug all that in with the software drum or the software click track. And then you play it a few times, and when it works, that's when you know you've got the right balance of tempo. You can see up the top there, we're at 90, and at 41, 111, that's where we begin to slow down to about 80 beats per minute, I guess. Oh, hang on, let me make sure it's tracking along. So we got down to about 80 beats per minute, and then we started back up at 90. My way back home. And I'm just going to click further down the song just to show you where it really kicks into gear. This is towards the end of the song. And we're cruising along at 90 beats per minute. And then we're really going to slow down. I think I might even get down to about 60 beats per minute. 60, 80, and back at 85 beats per minute now. So that's a new tempo again. Before we're at 90, we're slowing down though, so we're at 85 beats per minute now.
Yes, I can find my way back, my way back, my way back home to you, back home.
Okay, so that's flexing the time on a song. I'll do a video some other time on actually how you do it, but just know now that you can. Okay, so that's manipulating the tempo in your song to better facilitate the emotional life of the song. So to recap, I think practicing with a metronome is great. It does improve your ability to know where you rush and slow down unintentionally, but make no mistake, speeding up and slowing down is a tool in a musician's tool belt that really should be used whenever and wherever you can. It's just as important as volume, it's just as important as tone, it's just as important as the choice of musical instruments that went into recording the piece in the first place. You've got to remember that when you're playing music, it's a living and breathing thing, and you've got to honour the emotional life of the song. So make sure that your pursuit of absolute perfect timing doesn't get in the way of the song's emotional content. Practice with a metronome. Practice slower and faster speeds with a metronome and then go back to the original pace. All that's great, but just remember that practicing with a metronome doesn't improve your sense of timing. It improves your ability to play with others. Okay, so that's it. Again, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and turn on all notifications. I'm Mewan, this is the Musician's Workbench. Until next time.